Another roller coaster of a day on Wall Street, but the sell-off ends for now. In California, what happened when the murder capital of America turned to its neighbors for help? And the seventh grader whose explosive science project was deemed politically incorrect.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. That sigh of relief you heard this afternoon came from Wall Street, which has just wrapped up a nerve-wracking week. After days of near free fall, the Dow Jones Industrial Average actually gained a little today, up about 9 points in very heavy trading, after a week in which stocks lost more than 138 points. Both President Clinton and Vice President Gore said today, don't overreact. The economy's in good shape. But it's been a tough sell. On Wall Street, ABC's Jim Hickey.
At the New York Stock Exchange this morning, traders suspected they'd be in for a wild ride today. They were right. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed a little at the opening, but it quickly dropped 67 points in just over an hour, a huge loss. For the third day in a row, the exchange implemented special rules to help stabilize the market. At mid-afternoon, the Dow Jones was down 20 points, then up more than 11. All in the space of 30 minutes. Some analysts say this volatility is an overreaction by big investors to higher interest rates the Federal Reserve began imposing in February to control inflation.
Rates go higher, stock market goes lower. And what you've been seeing in the last week is simply the culmination of the decline that began on February 4th.
Another reason analysts give for the manic trading today is that tomorrow the market will be closed because it's Good Friday. The last thing big investors say they want to worry about over the Easter holiday weekend is how much money they could be losing. While professional traders on Wall Street were selling, some to take profits, others to make up losses, down on Main Street, individual investors continued to stand firm.
I'm not concerned, and I expected it. The only thing I didn't know is when it would start.
I'm riding out the storm, so I'm a long-term investor.
President Clinton today tried to soothe the market's troubled waters.
What I'm trying to do is to reassure people so that we don't go beyond skittishness, because no one believes that there's a serious problem with the underlying American economy. It is healthy and it is sound.
At the final bell, when the Dow Jones closed up more than 9 points, weary traders gave a tired cheer and went home to a long and much welcomed weekend. Jim Hickey, ABC News, New York.
Another thing unsettling the market is the increasing tension with Japan over trade. In Washington today, the Clinton administration turned up the pressure. It released a so-called hit list of countries that it says engage in unfair trading practices, with Japan at the top. But ABC's John Martin reports there is another side to the story.
The report released today covers 34 nations and 4 trading blocs. It contains 44 pages of complaints criticizing Japanese barriers to American automobiles, medical equipment, telecommunications, insurance, and computer components.
This report is our most comprehensive factual statement of the barriers that are facing us.
The idea is that within 6 months, the U.S. will decide which barriers are unacceptable, then put countries on warning, either negotiate changes or face retaliation. But America isn't exactly pure. It violates some of the same trade principles it wants others to follow. Example, beef. In 1988, the U.S. put South Korea on its hit list for quotas keeping out U.S. beef. Yet America had its own beef quotas. They cost American consumers more than $800 million in higher prices at home. Sometimes the results are disastrous. In 1986, the U.S. claimed Canada was subsidizing its timber industry too highly. It forced Canada to raise export prices 15%. But this added more than $1,000 to the cost of building a U.S. house and cost 16,000 American construction workers their jobs.
The U.S. trade policies threats have been very ineffective, and they've hurt the U.S. consumers and businesses more often than they've opened foreign markets.
By one estimate, America's trade barriers to foreign products cost Americans as much as $70 billion a year, raising questions of just who is being protected. John Martin, ABC News, Washington.
From Capitol Hill today, a serious accusation against this country's largest maker of cigarettes. Congressman Henry Waxman charged that in the early 1980s, the Philip Morris Company conducted a study on rats, which suggested that nicotine is addictive, but that the company withheld the study from the public. Philip Morris issued a written response saying that the researcher in charge of the study concluded just the opposite, that nicotine is not addictive. In a moment, to be a target in Hebron. What happened when some teenagers decided to videotape their own crime? And on the American agenda, helping their neighbors because they had no choice.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Campbell's.
I've lived through 15 presidents, 2 world wars, and a depression. Still, folks say I don't look anywhere near 95. Maybe that's because every day I eat a well-balanced meal with a hot, delicious bowl of Campbell's soup. Many varieties are a good source of vitamins, like A or C. But don't take my word for it. Just ask my lovely bride of 57 years.
Oh, Henry, stop.
Campbell's. Imagine you just stepped on the accelerator of an Eldorado touring coupe with the North Star system by Cadillac. Suddenly you've passed 60 miles per hour, and as you quickly approach 100 miles per hour, you're wondering, is this really a Cadillac? Of course, you wouldn't really do this because you're not a professional test driver on a closed track. But if you were, you could approach 150 miles per hour. The Eldorado touring coupe with the North Star system by Cadillac, creating a higher standard.
In Somalia today, an American relief worker was kidnapped and one of his bodyguards was shot to death not far from United Nations headquarters in Mogadishu. Alfred Petters is the only American Red Cross worker who chose to remain in Somalia now that the U.S. troops have left. No word on what the gunmen are demanding. In the Middle East today, officials from Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization have signed an agreement which will, in their words, make up for lost time. Israeli troops will leave the Gaza Strip more quickly than they had planned, and there will be new security arrangements for the Palestinians of Hebron. A small international force will go there in the coming week. ABC's Dean Reynolds on what they'll be up against.
This is the road the new international force will have to take next week to get to Hebron. What this Jewish settler under attack today knows well, the 160 lightly armed observers from Norway, Denmark, and Italy are about to find out. They will be entering a place where several hundred Jews live amid 100,000 Palestinians who engage in daily battles with soldiers. It is the first time the Israelis have agreed to foreign forces in areas they control, but Palestinians here call the step cosmetic.
If the agreement does not state an evacuation of the settlers of Hebron, this agreement will lead to failure.
The settlers and their supporters were pouring into the Hebron area for a rally against the peace process.
No foreign observers should be in here to protect the Palestinians. We could protect them, and who's protecting the Jews?
First stop for many demonstrators was the grave of Baruch Goldstein, the settler who killed 30 Palestinians in Hebron a month ago. Dr. Goldstein, we will love you forever, they chanted. Death to the Arabs. Baruch, the hero. At the rally, there were calls to resist any future moves by the government to take the Jews out of Hebron or other settlements. Indeed, some speakers said vacating settlements would be a sin. Among the settlers' allies is a group of prominent rabbis who say it is against Jewish law to evacuate settlements, and that any Israeli soldier who is told to evict a settler should disobey the order. Israeli leaders condemn such talk and believe most of the country does too. The settlers may insist they will never leave their homes here, but the political foundation on which they stand is clearly eroding. Dean Reynolds, ABC News in the Israeli-occupied West Bank.
In South Africa, President F.W. de Klerk has taken the most extreme measure available to him to keep the peace. With less than a month until the elections, violence has been escalating between rival black political factions. Today, de Klerk imposed a state of emergency in the most violent province of all, the eastern region of Natal. ABC's Jim Laurie is in South Africa.
South Africa's army was being deployed slowly today, ready to move into the trouble spots of Natal. Ready to clamp down, detain without trial, round up weapons, all in the name of imposing order.
We will not allow anarchy to develop in any part of our country. We are in control. There is no need for panic.
The extraordinary measures were taken in the hope the election campaign can now proceed freely in Natal, that security forces will be able to rein in the Zulu-led Inkatha Freedom Party, which has sought to disrupt next month's elections. The state of emergency was imposed after repeated calls for action by the African National Congress and after what President de Klerk said was clear evidence of plots by various groups to destabilize the situation in Natal. The ANC's Nelson Mandela was quick to embrace de Klerk's move, but he is clearly aware of the irony. Mandela and his party were victims of previous emergency decrees.
In the past, the state of emergency has been used as an instrument of maintaining repression. This particular state of emergency is intended to save lives.
But in Natal, that view is not shared by Inkatha leader Chief Buthelezi.
It will provoke anger. It will provoke resentment. Now, in the temperature that we have, one cannot predict what that will lead to.
The army has had success in restoring order in some townships in South Africa. Now it'll face its greatest task in Natal, where violence has claimed 300 lives in the last month. Jim Laurie, ABC News, Pretoria.
In France today, thousands of students celebrated victory over the government. After several weeks of demonstrations, the Prime Minister abandoned a plan that would have reduced wages for many young workers. Several hundred teenagers broke away from the celebration in Paris. They were intent on destruction. It took police several hours to restore order. No leniency today from the highest court in Singapore. The judges upheld the sentence for the American teenager Michael Fay. 6 beatings with a cane, which can scar for life, and 4 months in jail. The charge? Spray painting several cars. His mother is now trying to organize a worldwide campaign for clemency.
If they feel that they have to do something like this to somebody, just to prove that they're so powerful, then let me do it. Let me go.
The State Department again today called the caning sentence excessive. Tonight on Primetime, we are there with the parents as the news of today's court ruling comes from Singapore. When we come back, the American agenda and a simple crime-fighting idea.
Introducing the new Goodyear Eagle AquaTread for performance sedans. The wet traction of an AquaTread, the performance of an Eagle. 2 aqua channels maximize acceleration, cornering, and braking traction. The new Eagle AquaTread, only from Goodyear.
Why not?
Now that he switched to Fix-It, he can go from morning till night and still eat like that.
Even in the hottest liquids, when other adhesives stop holding, Fix-It holds stronger and longer. For the strongest, longest hold, Fix-It and forget it.
Gas. When bloating, pain, and pressure tie you in knots, don't make the antacid mistake. Take this little pill instead. Maximum Strength Phazine. There's more gas relief in one Phazine soft gel than in a whole bottle of regular Maalox. All this Maalox can't get rid of gas, but with the liquid medicine in just one Phazine, the gas is gone. Take Phazine, and the gas is gone.
You want to do someone a real favor? Tell them about Miracle-Gro.
I have 400 rose bushes, and I feed them all with Miracle-Gro.
My roses have won Queen of the Show 4 times.
You'll never know what a great gardener you can be until you use Miracle-Gro.
I feel so light, I could float away. Is it Stefan? Or I can't believe it's not Butter Light. With 1/3 fewer calories than butter, no cholesterol, and great taste. It must be I can't believe it's not Butter Light. I don't know anyone named Stefan.
Angry TSU students meet with the university president over a religious controversy. And friends of a hit-and-run victim want to know why a repeat drunk driving suspect was still on the road. Those stories coming up at 6.
In Houston tonight, a group of teenagers is in trouble with the law, accused of a variety of crimes. And this time, police didn't have any trouble finding their suspects. Here's ABC's Charlie Murphy.
You're about to see a federal crime. A teenager puts a dynamite charge in a mailbox and blows it up. A friend videotaped it. You're seeing it played on a monitor in the office of a Houston police constable. This is another kid setting fire to a home air conditioner. 8 boys aged 15 to 16 have been charged with burglary, criminal mischief, and arson.
Mean little devil. That's a Molotov cocktail if it could throw into the street.
Here's how they got caught. They blocked a bike path with debris. A woman who fell off her bike got up and started clearing the path. She saw the camera on the ground and took it. Her home was burglarized the next day and the camera taken, but not before she had turned the tapes over to the police constable.
This is the first time we've ever had them videotape it and make it easier for us to solve.
Do you like that? I mean, if they're going to be involved in it, yeah, go ahead and put it on.
I would suggest they all videotape it. Make it wonderful for us.
Today, all the kids are in custody and their affluent neighborhood is nice and quiet again. Charles Murphy, ABC News.
Our American agenda tonight is from a place a lot of people would be afraid to spend time, at least until fairly recently. It's the California city of Palo Alto, only about 25 miles from San Francisco. It is surrounded by two communities that are quite well-to-do. But East Palo Alto was a dangerous and desperate place. Then the police chief had an idea. Our agenda reporter is Ken Kashiwahara.
2 years ago, residents say the most common sound in East Palo Alto was gunfire. An all-too-common sight, drug dealers and death. 42 homicides a year in a city of only 24,000. East Palo Alto had earned the title Murder Capital of the Country. At McNair High School, the kids still talk about it.
We went over there and a man was all blue. He had been shot in the neck.
2 years ago, two of my friends got killed. They used to come to the school.
East Palo Alto, with no industry, has always been one of the poorest cities in the Bay Area. Gangs and drug dealers rule the streets. The tiny police force could afford to field only 2 or 3 patrol officers per shift. They were outnumbered and outgunned.
Our back was against the wall.
Police Chief Bernie Matthews.
You didn't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out you got this amount here of crime and these few officers. You're not going to make a difference.
East Palo Alto was caught in a vicious cycle. It couldn't hire more police because all the violence kept revenue-producing businesses away, and it couldn't combat the violence without more police officers. So Chief Matthews was forced to look elsewhere for answers. He turned to his 2 affluent neighbors, Palo Alto and Menlo Park, asking if their cities would donate 5 officers to work full-time in East Palo Alto, not just for a few months, but for several years. They agreed. Even though they face tight budgets and rising crime rates of their own, the neighboring police chiefs admit they were being more than just neighborly. They feared the violence was about to spill over into their cities.
I believe you can either pay now or pay later. You can't just point to a city like East Palo Alto and say that's their problem and maybe it'll go away, because it won't go away.
If he runs and he bolts out of the house, let the dog go after him.
East Palo Alto's chief got the county and the state to supply 27 more officers. Together, they formed a regional police force called the Red Team.
Shoot him!
The Red Team prepared to do battle in East Palo Alto, going through tactical training at a military base.
This is a little more intensive. It's designed for high arrest, high profile type police work, as opposed to just regular patrol police work or what we're used to.
Once Red Team members hit the streets, they found unexpected support.
Those 2 that just went down there looking for a spot to set up.
Residents organized patrols to intimidate drug dealers and to discourage drug buying.
Would you hear gunfire out here? I hear lots of gunfire, especially at night.
Dennis Schertzer joined the effort to take back his town. He was fed up, he says, with dealers taking over his street. Fed up because in a single year, gangs killed 9 people in his neighborhood alone, marking each death with a tombstone spray-painted on the sidewalk.
It was bad. We were all in danger. And there was no real source of help to turn to.
Put your hands on the ground. Put it on the ground.
The battle for East Palo Alto has been going on for more than a year now, and the results are dramatic. Murders have dropped 69%, armed robberies 75%, assaults with a firearm 57%. Residents say their city has already changed.
We see kids on the street playing now. We see them going to the parks.
Now, like when I go to other cities, they ask me where I'm from. I'm not ashamed to say I'm from East Palo Alto. I was standing out there and he doubled back your way.
The outside police agencies say they will stay here until East Palo Alto can afford to hire more officers of its own. In the meantime, the challenge is to use the break in violence to attract businesses and build an economic base, to breathe life into a city that once had a reputation for death.
Good job.
This is Ken Kashiwahara for the American Agenda.
When you want something better, aspire. Aspire to change your image. Aspire to make life easier. Aspire to protect your dreams. Aspire to be ready for anything. Aspire to spend money wisely. Introducing the new Aspire from Ford, the lowest priced car with standard dual airbags. Aspire, a new kind of car for anyone reaching for something better.
Dear Granola, you did good with this cereal, but I got a problem.
Uh-oh.
These crunchy granola clusters, so tasty and low in fat.
We thought you'd like it.
With a touch of honey and all these raisins.
Too many?
I love it.
So, what's the problem?
The name.
Huh?
Well, I wouldn't call it Branola.
It's got bran.
But it tastes great.
Okay, what would you call it?
That's your job. I just want to eat it.
Post Granola cereal so delicious you won't believe the name.
People who really understand money carry the Discover Card. Only Discover Card offers cashback bonus award. So it's the choice of people who really know the drill. It pays to discover.
It was a good day. We helped close a deal in Denver and win a case in Washington, D.C. We stayed late to meet a deadline in Dayton, and we helped a small company in Raleigh get a little bigger. We're interim personnel. Every morning, we fill more than 25,000 temporary jobs across America. And if you don't think of temporary workers as being as skilled or qualified or caring as permanent employees, then you haven't talked to us. Interim personnel, temporary heroes.
Fibercon or Metamucil? Both give you the same predictable regularity, the same natural action of fiber. So what makes Fibercon different? With Fibercon, I get my fiber in 2 caplets. Fibercon, fiber regularity that's easier to take.
It has taken nearly 5 years, but the United States finally has a national blueprint for improving its schools. President Clinton signed it into law today. Among the goals to be achieved by the year 2000, getting drugs and violence out of schools, making sure children are ready to learn before they get to school, and toughening standards for what they learn once they get there. Here's our education reporter, Bill Blakemore.
The bill that the president signed today funds the creation of 3 national panels that will approve voluntary national standards for what kids should learn in school.
We want world-class standards. We want a way of measuring whether the children learn them or not. And then we want to say to people all across the country, here are the standards. Here's how we'll know whether you're making it or not. Now you figure out how to do it. Use your mind, use your energy.
He's talking about model standards, like those now being written by educators and experts in each field. In math, for example, whether 4th graders should be able to put fractions like these in order from smaller to larger. And in English, what level of words should a 12th grader be able to use? States don't have to accept these model standards, but if they want federal money to help improve schools, they must now convince the Department of Education that they are imposing some system of equally rigorous standards. The idea is that this process will raise the level of learning.
And their importance is not in the compulsion, but their importance is in that it's getting a consensus in this country as to what we expect our children to be able to do.
What the new legislation does is basically treat states looking for federal education dollars like businesses looking for a loan. They have to prove they're going to be tough on themselves in order to earn it. Bill Blakemore, ABC News.
A Navy panel investigating the largest cheating scandal in the history of the U.S. Naval Academy has recommended expelling 29 of the students involved. The Honor Review Board says 42 other midshipmen should be disciplined but not expelled, and it cleared another 35 of charges they cheated on an engineering exam in December 1992. Good news and bad news today for the soap opera star Susan Lucci, who's always nominated but never wins an Emmy for Best Actress in a Soap. Miss Lucci will not lose for the 15th time this year because she wasn't even nominated. As they say, sometimes it's lose a few, lose a few. When we come back, the high school science project that misfired.
Don't miss this! Color Tile's first time ever 3-day Easter sale. Every square yard of carpet, every color, every texture, up to 50% off. Every square foot of ceramic, up to 60% off. Every sheet vinyl, every vinyl tile, up to 50% off. Every wall covering, up to 70% off. Every wood floor, up to 54% off. Crystal pleated shades, buy one, get 3 free. 6 months, no payment. Color Tile's first time ever 3-day Easter sale. Saturday hours extended until midnight. Don't miss it.
Roses, I want roses. That's it? One stinking lousy bug-eating rose.
Ortho-Systemic Rose and Flower Care can help.
Oh, yeah?
It fertilizes and protects against bugs. 2 jobs in 1 simple step.
That's all it takes?
That's all it takes. Ortho Rose Care. 1 step to gorgeous roses.
Ah, yes. 1 step. Did I mention I love roses?
Ortho. You're working too hard without us.
I still remember getting my first candy from my grandfather. It was Werther's Original, and I was 4. I remember opening that golden wrapper and then that first taste. Sweet and creamy and just plain good. I felt I was really somebody special when Grandpa gave me his wonderful butter candy. Now I'm the grandfather. And what else would I give my grandson but Werther's Original? He's somebody special too.
Finally tonight, science, safety, and politics. Earlier tonight, we mentioned the new education goals for American students. One of those goals states, U.S. students will be first in the world in math and science. Keep that in mind as you listen to this story about a promising young science student and what happened to one of his experiments. Here's ABC's Ron Claiborne.
12-year-old Russ Grisback is an avid, licensed gun enthusiast. So when he was assigned to do a project for his 7th grade science class, he decided to study how different gunpowders affect bullet speed and accuracy. His project earned him an A+.
He followed the scientific method. It was well thought out. It was well written out.
In fact, the project, which Russ's father had supervised for safety, was good enough to be invited to the annual San Diego Science and Engineering Fair next month. But 2 weeks later, Russ was told that fair officials had changed their minds because they feared the project might be unsafe.
The fear again is that if a kid walked through the science fair and saw this experiment, was intrigued by it, that kid would then go home and try to replicate it under conditions that weren't as supervised or as precise.
That argument infuriated Russ's father, who accused the science fair of turning down his son's project not for safety reasons, but because it involved a gun. And guns are politically incorrect.
We're doing something that is legal, it's constructive, and it's very scientific, and it should be displayed.
I'm just pretty upset that they won't let it go. I mean, I'm not saying that mine's better than everybody else's and that I should win all the awards in the fair, but I just like a fair shot.
If fair officials do not reconsider when they meet again next week, Russ intends to take his project to the science fair anyway and set up his display outside. Russ says the most important lesson he's learned from his science project is not about ballistics, but about his rights. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, Ramona, California.
That's our report on World News tonight. I'm Diane Sawyer. I hope you'll join me later on Prime Time. Until then, good night.
Good evening. I'm Ann Holt.
And I'm John Siegenthaler. Angry TSU students meet with the university president over a religious controversy.